Broadcasting live from our satellite studios in Boston, Massachusetts, it's time for the special on-the-road edition of Learning Insights, featuring learning professionals who are improving performance and driving business results.
And we are back for another exciting and informative edition of Learning Insights. Stone Payton, Lee Cantor with you here. We also have Dan Collier.
You mic'd him up. I don't know what you were thinking about.
What happened? Who did? Wow,
you held me out as long as you could.
Well, welcome to the show, Dan.
The mic's really plugged in this time.
Yeah, no kidding. How's it been for you today so far? You had a good time?
Yeah, I have. It's been an unbelievable day, and I just can't hold back anymore. I had to join in.
Well, I think you joined the right one. I've been looking forward to since the moment I saw the title. Lee, share the title.
Tales from the Scrappy Side. Starting training departments from scratch.
And with us to have that conversation, please join me in welcoming to the broadcast Senior Training Manager, Customer Experience at Navinet, Miss Erin Gary. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Great, thank you.
Are you feeling scrappy?
I'm always feeling very scrappy.
So how do you define scrappy?
I think that it's resourceful and kind of willing to push forward and to push through all the barriers that might come up when something is brand new or you're introducing new ideas to people.
So was that one of your superpowers?
It's one of my superpowers. I did actually, I was asked that question on an interview of how do you define scrappy, and it was from somebody from a different country. And I think that scrappy meant quarrelsome and full of fight, so that I didn't actually get that job.
Sorry about that. So now, were you always a scrappy person?
Yeah, I think so. I'd like to think so, and certainly at work, but I would consider myself a resourceful person.
Do you think that is this something you're born with, or can it be trained?
Well, as a learning and development professional, I think anything can be trained.
You really believe that to be so?
I think most things can be trained.
That was good.
I think that
how would you train?
Have the capacity. That's one of the job performance factors, right?
Okay, so train someone on being scrappy. How would you go about doing that?
I think that it's about being able to dig in and if I were to train somebody, I try to give them a lot of ambiguous situations and give them projects where there wasn't a lot of direction and help them or coach them through digging in and finding answers.
Because that's an important quality in today's time.
And neither of which ever happens, of course, in the real world, right?
Right. There's
low
never
resources and ambiguous direction.
Right. There's always clarity and abundance of resources. All right, but we're here to talk about kind of scrappiness in starting a training department. So let's talk about that. How'd you get involved in this? You had to do this on your own?
I've had to do this
multiple times.
In every training and development position I've had, I've been the first one in. So, starting from scratch.
So this can't be an accident. This must be something you're doing.
It's something I'm doing.
It's addictive behavior.
So you're the go-to person when it comes to starting training departments?
I think in certain environments. So certainly companies that are kind of more on the adolescent trying to get to the next level find my experience compelling in terms of being able to start something up.
So then what do they have if they don't have a training department? What are they doing?
They're most often doing things that are, some shadowing or some death by PowerPoint, lecture style content. But there's not usually a plan or a curriculum or anything that's really structured or following any sort of adult learning or instructional design principles.
So they're kind of winging it, just the best they can do?
There's a lot of winging it. Yeah, there's a lot of winging it even after they bring somebody on.
So are there some telltale signs that you've identified now that you've done this a while that where you can tell or they can tell, hey, it's really time to start. We need to structure.
We got to grow up here a little bit.
Yeah, I think that broadly in an organization, they're starting to look at scalability. So that's usually when they start looking for somebody to do training in a more formal way. But there's usually, that is kind of going on in the organization, but there's usually something else that might be a trigger. So maybe they're doing a lot of hiring, they're growing quickly, or they're having a lot of turnover. So maybe it's the hiring that's a trigger. Or it could be that they're trying to formalize an implementation process or a project management methodology. And that's the trigger where they want something that's going to be, they're seeing a training person being able to bring a standard way to train or standard way to get people up to speed in that.
So the organization could do something in a more systematic manner as opposed to this kind of haphazard manner that they've been doing?
Right. They question whether or not what they've been doing is effective. And I think that in a growing and very busy environment, it's difficult to continue to tap subject matter experts to onboard somebody or to constantly shadow, and people aren't getting up to speed fast enough.
Right.
I've also heard some organizations that react to employee survey feedback, and they think, oh, well, our folks are asking for more learning and development opportunities, so we should bring somebody in to do that, which there's certainly good reasons just to bring in a full-time person for training and development. And sometimes that's not always going to give it enough legs.
Right. Now, is it something that the senior management is saying that this is needed, or is it somebody from HR that says there's too much here for me?
There may not even be an HR in some of these places she's talking about.
So it depends on how they're envisioning aligning the training function. So I've been aligned both ways, certainly in an HR function with there's generally something specific they're looking for. So they're growing quickly. People are being promoted into management positions. We need a formalized management program. So that would be an HR, or a lot of times they're looking at onboarding specifically in that situation. Or I've also been aligned in operations or customer experience, as I am now, where they're changing processes, implementing a new methodology, and they're looking for somebody to help build a curriculum or a larger strategy around that.
Right, because the people that are already there, that's just not in their skill set. They've never done it like that before.
They've never done something in a formal way, and they feel like they need something that's going to be repeatable.
So now when you're doing this, it seems like there's a lot of choices that you can make or ways to help them. So how do you kind of prioritize, and how do you kind of implement this? Because it's, in some ways, you have a blank slate here, right?
Yeah, so it depends on kind of where they're starting with resources. So that's something, not everybody, when they want to bring somebody in, has identified a budget or identified how subject matter experts are going to be involved.
They have a budget for hiring you.
Yeah.
And they're hoping.
And then it's a surprise that the rest of developing a department is not
it costs
free.
Money too.
Oh, wait a minute.
Wait, we just hired Aaron. Aren't we done? Does that ever happen?
Yeah. And sometimes after proposing the strategy, you're like, oh, we're so sorry. We're going to do a layoff. Maybe this training thing is not what we thought was going to.
Is that true?
Yeah, I've been laid off not very quickly, but in a shorter time than I would have expected, because they didn't anticipate how much work it would be to formalize a training function.
Because they thought that you solved their problem.
Right. And then they thought, well, we were doing this ad hoc stuff before with the PowerPoint and the lecture, and we'll just keep that going.
Mm-hmm.
So are there some, and I know the answer is yes, so I guess I'm asking, what are some kind of tricks of the trades, some low-cost kind of things you can do while budgets are iffy or low, just to kind of get things going a little bit and have some momentum? I bet you have some go-to.
I do. So I think the first thing that I try to do is just get on people's radar. So and be a resource and be there to help. So something that's very low-hanging fruit is to help people with their slide design. So talk to them about adult learning principles, talk to them about why lecture style is not super effective, and be able to give them some other strategies to be able to do job aids or other type of leave behind material. A lot of the organizations that are doing ad hoc things think that everything needs to go on a slide. So trying to raise visibility and educate people on adult learning is a step. And also you can get some content out there, do some peer learning, do some, get some focus groups together, get some best practice discussions going, and then produce job aids off of that, and then give those. Get people in a room to do brown bag lunch and find free content out there, tons of free webinars, an ATD webinar maybe, and, get people to bring a lunch and project it and then talk about it after. So anything that you can do to raise the visibility, start producing some really quick and easy content, and start educating people about what adult learning is, the faster they'll see that you can add value.
So you had me at peer learning, and I'll tell you why. In a brief role as a salesperson, I remember attending a training where really we were all responsible for running the class, and we were really training each other. I got to tell you, that's one of the best training experiences I've ever had or heard them talk about. And you combine that with the credibility of a job aid that would come from the guy who is or the lady who is one of the top performers. I'm a lot more interested in that job aid if it's on the back of a cocktail napkin, right?
Right. And then people are learning about instructional design if you get them involved in teaching something and then can help them think through what's the audience for this, what's the goal of this training, and get them to kind of flip the script from a lecture and get it to be driven by the audience. They learn a little bit about facilitation and good training practices, and you can kind of get the people, the peers that are going to be participating to know a little bit more about training and start advocating for that in the organization, and then you can kind of spread out, metastasize.
So now what's the most rewarding part of this for you?
I think I love to help. I love to be able to solve a problem and to help people out. And I think there's so many people that have been tortured by the death by PowerPoint training.
This PowerPoint thing has come up a lot with her.
Man.
There was one organization that I had seen. It was a software boot camp that took place for over 2 weeks, all on slides.
Wow. How
Yeah.
exciting. For a
So-
whole weekend?
No, it was an entire week. It was
A
2
week?
weeks. 2 weeks. 2 weeks of software training on slides.
No way.
And I actually got hives. I did. I'm not lying.
What's the most number of words you've seen on a slide?
I don't know. I shut it down because I might.
What do you recommend?
I recommend no words.
No words, only pictures?
Pictures. That would be my preference.
All
But
right, I want to take this thing real world because I know, I know that you know. She's talking about us. The business, I'm not talking about training pros. Business Radio X, we're starting to grow. And I'm really wondering, is it time to have a more formal training structure? Because right now, as you described earlier, if we're trying to get someone ramped up or if we're trying to keep them from, trying to get them over the hump, it's the subject matter experts who are busy doing other things.
right.
That we say, oh man, you gotta run down to that studio and spend a day or two with them. So that's starting to happen. So I would be interested to get some real time consulting here. If we were going to start having this kind of conversation with someone of your caliber and of your ilk, I don't know that I would. In fact, I know that I don't. I don't know what questions to. How would I go about interviewing someone like you? Where would I find them, and what kind of questions should I ask them?
So I would ask somebody that's going to be starting up training. I'd ask them if they're scrappy, of course.
That's right.
Right. Listen to this interview, and if you can't,
You can identify with the scrappiness.
that's right. Then
You're out. Forget it.
But I think in other ways, looking for somebody that might have some consulting or orientation towards process can help a lot. There's a lot of times that when you're entering an organization for the first time and you're generating, particularly to solve one of their problems, they're growing, they're putting together a new methodology, they're introducing new processes. A lot of times you're getting content that's very, very half-baked. So you need an eye as an instructional designer to put it together into a curriculum, but you also need to be able to consult with them on, hey, you know what, I'm anticipating these questions coming out of this process that you want me to train. And you talk them through actually fleshing out their internal processes as well as developing the curriculum and the training.
So interviewing the subject matter expert in order to kind of get the good stuff out of their brain.
That is definitely a key skill, and being able to kind of cut down on the noise. There's a lot of subject matter experts that like to talk in exceptions, and being able to identify what exactly it is that somebody needs to know and putting together a sensible program just focused on that.
Right, because I know that, like, internally for us, that we are good at kind of saying, okay, we do this, and then you're going to get this outcome.
just do this.
Just do this.
It's like Ted Williams, just when the ball comes, just really hit it hard.
Right.
And no, it's a real challenge for us. He and I are pretty good at a couple of different aspects of what we do. But so if we were going to hire someone, but let's be honest, we have some challenge in transitioning. So if we were going to interview someone like you, one of the things maybe we ought to do is give them an opportunity to hear us talk and then translate that into something that someone else could do.
And I think that
That'd be a good exercise,
observation
right?
is great. I think also talking to multiple people that are doing the same thing and working with leadership to understand which of the things are the art part of the job and which are the science. Which things do you actually want to create a process around, and which things should be up to the person to use their own creativity to determine.
So now you see that time and time again that any job, I mean, not any, but like a lot of jobs have some art and science.
Oh, definitely.
So there's some methodology that you got to hit these 6 things.
Right.
But how you get there, and if you go to, 1, 4, 2, 3, that's okay. you can go in whatever order, but just hit these key points.
Right.
But I got to give you room to be yourself. When you know that going in, is it something that you're like, look, if the person doesn't have this kind of skills or aren't intuitive and aren't good at asking questions, maybe this role isn't right for them because they're not going to be able to.
So you could hire somebody that's really great on the instructional design and then know that the work of really identifying what you want them to train in and be able to, and you personally would need to drive forward decisions around that content. Mm-hmm. Or you could have somebody come in that could help you make some of those decisions or facilitate those discussions about what you want the actual content to be. And then they can kind of take that and craft a program off of it. So the work has to happen. A lot of times when you go into some kind of this adolescent type of companies, they haven't really decided exactly what they want. They want I worked at a place that wanted a new project management methodology, and there was a section of it that was management and consulting. And when I asked what goes on there, they hadn't decided yet, but they wanted me to train this methodology. So part of my role was to help them think through, all right, what's going to happen during this phase of the project? So yeah, somebody that can help figure that out.
These conversations, though, these are critical to the success of the company. And I can see people in leadership positions being motivated by everything from genuine concern, interest in outcome, to candidly sometimes something as shallow as, look, I just want our people to know we care, so make sure they know we just invested in a trainer and she's building a training department. I mean, sometimes we think like that too a little bit, right?
Right.
And you probably run it, and if you're on your side, you probably want to make sure that that's not where it starts and stops.
Right. So
you want to know that it's more than just that.
I want to make sure that if my role is going to survive and some people are going to invest and buy into training, I want to make sure that whatever I'm doing is connected very, very closely to what the organization or that department's trying to achieve. And if I can put it in those words of this curriculum, this training intervention is going to help this problem, then they're probably going to fund the department and continue that. If not, then they're going to lose interest and think that let's go back to the ad hoc thing that we were doing before and that was good enough.
But you have the confidence and the scar tissue maybe a little bit, I don't know, of knowing what questions to ask, knowing that this is important and it's in everyone's best interest that you ask these questions, right?
Well, now she's learned that she should ask that. I know you're hiring me, but do you have a budget for this?
Right.
Yes.
Beyond me. Now you can.
And I've asked that and gotten some mixed responses. They're like,
what?
But why?
Well, and you know what's a fit and what's not.
Right. And I think that understanding in that situation, what's your build versus buy philosophy? Mm-hmm. If it's build, who's going to help?
Right.
Have you already cleared the plates of those people? I talked to another organization that they wanted an onboarding program that it was for a sales type of role, and the sales representatives were going to be doing the training, but they were motivated by their commissions.
Right.
And there was no discussion about how we were going to take them off the line to run the training.
Right.
They said, well, it'll be part of their job, so they'll just do it.
How'd that go?
I said, I think this might not be the right fit for me.
Dan, is any of this surprising you? Have you had any experience with this kind of thing where a company...
Some of this resembles you.
I was not saying that. But, you've been around...
Oh, very often. I empathize and sympathize with Aaron in a lot of the conversations that we've had. I've been at the inception of training departments in organizations that, it's always a struggle, and organizations look for training to be the solution without ever understanding what the problem is. So a lot of it goes back to some of the previous interviews we've had today and talking about performance consulting. I think one of the things that really stands out in Aaron's talk here with us this afternoon is, really kind of the scrappiness, the resilience that you're talking about of being able to stand up and not just say, okay, I'll go build it because that's what you're paying me to do. Right. So that's impressive.
But these execs should count themselves absolutely blessed to have someone of your caliber that is willing to have that conversation.
Right.
Because I'm sure even some very nice, well-meaning people, they may just feel like they really need the money, or maybe they don't understand the depth and breadth of what they're being asked to do. And I mean, an exec could really shoot him or herself in the foot if they are not talking to someone like you who's willing to have that eye-to-eye, peer-to-peer, real-world conversation.
Well, thank you. I'm certainly, one of the questions I like to ask is, could a contractor do this instead? And then I would point them to a company like Training Pros and say,
right. And sometimes
that might be a better fit.
answer.
Right.
Particularly if sometimes they're thinking about bringing an FTE in because they have a large project kind of thing. They're doing a new infrastructure, or they're rolling out a new operation software. That would be great for a contractor instead of a full-time employee. So they could look at it that way. And then I wouldn't be potentially looking for work.
But that would mean a heck of a lot to me. If you came to me and we had that conversation and you said that, just the fact that you would do that, now there's a level of credibility that you have with me that you can't buy.
Because you're looking out for our best interest.
You're looking
not
out for
just
our best interest.
right. You're not just trying to do something self-serving for you.
Well, I think it's, in a way, I like what I do to be effective, and I want to be able to do the best job possible. So if I know that I'm not going to have the resources or the buy-in, then it will be soul crushing.
Right.
All right. I want to play on the fun side of this thing for a minute. So let's say you do meet with the right type of exec. You like the culture. You've got funding. What are some fun, cool things that you might get going and off the ground pretty quick?
Right, your perfect job.
Funding.
So you got the money. I said, look, here, Aaron, look, whatever you need, you've got it. I'm serious about this training stuff. And even though they might still call it stuff, serious about this training development stuff, go forth. What are some cool things you might put your hands in?
I would think I'd really focus on onboarding and getting people off to the right foot in the organization. I think that that's an area where you can have a lot more fun. You can do a lot of things to get people really excited about the organization they've joined, and also kind of dial in opportunities to learn about them and get them to be able to talk about themselves and feel good that they've really honor the experience that they're bringing in. Mm-hmm. And I think whatever the organization is doing, I've worked in a lot of healthcare organizations, so being able to get somebody excited about being able to help patients or being able to solve some of the healthcare problems.
So mission.
Yeah. So being able to hook into that is, I find really fun, and being able to spend some resources getting people really excited about an organization that they've joined.
Well, it sounds like the culture is important to you.
Definitely. I think culture is one of the most important things I look for in a place that I'm going to join.
And then, so if you had your own company, what you mentioned onboarding, how would you, what specifically would you do to create the culture that you would like?
Well, sometimes I've had to sneak things into people's pudding. So the type of culture that I would like would be I'm a learning and development person, so to be focused on learning and development from day one. So one of the ways that I've done that is I was in an earlier job, I was given a tool called a gaps grid that allows somebody it's a bunch of conversational questions. It has people walking through their goals and perceptions and strengths. And I've had that as an assignment for them to bring to their manager to start a development discussion early. So I think that I'd probably do as much as I can and I've done also during onboarding communication skills and other things that would help them fit into the culture and also get them started out on the right foot with employees. So I would think about what types of things other than the standard, I'm going to give you the whole company history thing. So working a lot of those things, tools and professional
treasure hunt. Instead of a company history, make them talk to different people to learn the history of the company.
I would much rather that, yes. than
something more playful and engaging rather than here, read this.
Yes, even though, or I would rather here read this than let me read you a whole bunch of slides.
That's even worse.
All right. So what's next? Next few months for you?
Next few months, I'm, as you mentioned, I'm at Navinet, and we're launching a end user training program for our software. So working on that, working on the strategy, and working on getting a curriculum together for our end users.
So is there Tales from the Scrappy Side blog, book? What do you got upcoming?
Those are wonderful suggestions. I'm going to get right to work. Where's
now
my
a radio
computer?
Show, right? Tales from the Scrappy Side radio show.
I think I should have a weekly call-in show.
That's perfect.
I would be all over that brand. That's great.
Yeah.
I could have a call-in show. That would be great. We're listening.
Perfect.
Call in. I'll solve your training and development problems.
Well, this has been a great deal of fun, and I would like very much to stay connected. I think maybe circle back around and have a conversation like this again. I got to ask, so are you hanging out with other people, that maybe are part of an association or different kind of groups and stuff? Where do you hang?
I hang out a lot at ATD Greater Boston. So
ATD Greater Boston?
I recently joined as their VP of Marketing and Communication. So I'm going to be spending some time with them. I'm heading to the Chapter Leader Conference this weekend.
So you're going to scrapify?
I'm going to scrapify that. Absolutely. We're really looking to expand our presence and get some great events going on in some different areas. We've been in Waltham quite a lot. From someone that lives in Boston, we'd love some more locations to be able to get some more people involved.
Right.
And looking at how we can talk to some companies that are in the training field in this area to get them a little bit more involved and see how we can maybe market some of our events a little bit more in a targeted way so we can involve other people that could really benefit from our programs.
So that's a great way to connect with you, but also other folks in the same arena. I mean, we've heard people all day long talk about how great and wonderful ATD Boston is, and so clearly you're getting a tremendous amount of value out of it because you've specifically chosen to invest time and energy in a leadership position there. So
it's a great organization, in particular if we're talking Scrappy. You don't have a lot of companions or learning and development folks if you're the first person into a training role. Right. So to be able to come and network and be able to meet other people and bounce ideas and have, a group of people that really understand where you're coming from, it's really great.
And your company supports you being this active in ATD?
Absolutely.
No, it was a secret until now. No, we shouldn't dismiss that because that is
not every
important.
organization is.
Right. No, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's good. So that's a good place for people to reach out and collaborate with you. Are you also a LinkedIn
I'm
type
on LinkedIn.
person?
Yep.
All right. So that's a good place.
They can find me there. They can find me through ATD Greater Boston.
All right.
They can stalk me at Navinet if they like.
Because you're scrappy but accessible.
I'm scrappy but accessible. I'm not argumentative as that person thought. I can be, but that's not what I would put on my resume.
This has been an absolute delight. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Well, you are more than welcome, and let's do it again.
Let's, definitely.
And Dan, thanks for putting it together, man.
Well, thanks for having us.
All right, that's a wrap. We will be back in a few from Waltham. Is that how you pronounce it?
Waltham, Massachusetts.
Waltham, Massachusetts.
This has been a Special Business Radio X production, brought to you by Training Pros, your source for local learning and development experts. Learn more at training-pros.com.